It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and still only podcast. My name is Jared.
My name's Matt.
Oh, I'm Mike.
Oh, Mike, you're so crazy. Oh, man, you know, as we record this, it is late November, as it is measured in the old calendar. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about the holidays in the 25th century before. It's very different. People don't understand it. It scares them. But we thought we'd take some time on this show to talk about some of our favorite memories of Christmas past, back before the faceless drones of the 25th century ruined everything.
It's true. You know, I remember we talked about how, holiday traditions are just so bizarre in the future. Some don't exist anymore. There's different ones now. I learned a new one, guys.
What's that?
Well, I decorated my tube.
I see.
To feel a little festive.
Looks nice.
That's taking a big chance there.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't realize what kind of chance I was taking. I don't know if you guys remember what, back in the 21st century, if you had a pineapple and placed it outside, what that meant. Does anybody know what that means?
In the 21st century.
Because if you don't, look it up, because that's what this means here. And I've been getting some strange knocks on my door. So,
Is
telling you now.
Is this a real thing, or is this something you're making up?
Now, if I put this into the Google, will it bring up freaky...
You should go to the Google Time Machine real quick and see what I'm talking about.
Okay. I'm searching this now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, boy. Okay. Wow.
So you can tell I'm getting some weird knocks in my tube.
I didn't think that exchanging of bodily fluids was a thing in the 25th century.
You know what it is? I think it's the colors, because everything up here is taupe.
Yes. So
I think these colors are driving them mad and bringing out things that they haven't felt in maybe their whole lives.
Man, so those urges that are eons buried are coming to life again.
It's like pun far. It's like pun far times 10.
How does stuff like that even become established?
I don't know. Good grief.
But no, I can't wait. I have some good Christmas memories I like to revisit. But
yes, I have a few too. Speaking of memories, me and Mike, actually quite independent of one another, have just revisited the Sam Raimi SpiderMan Trilogy from the early aughts. And I think, Spider-Man being in the news heavily lately, as there is a new Spider-Man coming out very soon, in which Tobey Maguire is strongly rumored to appear in.
Well, now that these new now that the old seems to be part of the new.
Yeah, it seemed like a good time for a revisit. I watched part 1 and part 2 back to back, actually, last night. And I really, really enjoy those movies. And watching it brought me back to, I guess you could say, a simpler time when there wasn't 15 Marvel movies and TV shows a year.
You try to dovetail into each plot and figure out how they work together.
Yes, it was, like I said, a simpler time, and I hadn't gone back and watched those in so many years because ever since Civil War, we've had Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and I haven't really had the desire to look backwards. But with the new movie coming out soon, it seemed like a good time to revisit Tobey Maguire's version of the character. And I really liked the first two movies. I think the first two movies are really fantastic. Part 2 in particular still is just a great it's a great movie.
It's not really a standard superhero movie because he goes through the whole movie is focused on his acceptance of who he is. And that's really a bold move to take for a superhero movie. You know what I mean? Usually now that's like a 15-minute arc. But this is like a full 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Tony Stark doesn't want to be Iron Man for 20 minutes.
Yeah,
and then he gets his head together and comes back and is Iron Man again.
But they successfully tell the journey. You really feel like you're in his head for that time.
Because it has time to breathe.
He's not really Spider-Man like a whole lot in that movie either, if you think about it.
Yeah. Because he's doubting himself, and he's got the great montage with raindrops keep falling on my head.
And I mean, that's another thing. That scene should totally not work, but it does.
And when he's got the freeze frame.
Yeah. It's so bizarre. I remember that.
It looked like a TV show from the 70s.
I can't even believe the studio let that through. You want to do what?
No, it worked brilliantly.
Nothing's worrying me.
It was kind of refreshing to just watch this and not have the weight of so much backstory. I mean, we've talked about, the first 20-something films of the MCU, it was an unprecedented achievement. But you look back before that, before the MCU, and it was just a simpler time. And you got one Spider-Man movie every 3 years or so, and you didn't have 15 movies in between it. Every month or so, you have a new superhero movie. Back in those times, it was much different. And I really enjoyed revisiting those first two.
And I think Tobey Maguire is definitely still... He's like Christopher Reeve as the Superman.
I would say that's applicable. As Christopher Reeve had Superman 3, Tobey Maguire has Spider-Man 3. And watching the first two in such quick succession... And then I started part 3 this morning. It's very apparent very quickly that all is not right.
I will say this: when I watched 1 and 2, I didn't watch them back to back, but I think I watched them like one night. I watched one, and one night I watched another, and then I actually purposely waited a week to watch the third one because I didn't want to jump into that knowing what it was. And every time I watch that movie, I try to go into it like, well, maybe it won't be that bad this time. And I think like the first 50 minutes are pretty good. But I think there's 2 things that really derail, well, 3 things that really derail that movie. The memory loss for Harry is just...
It is so silly.
It's a reset, and I hate resets.
Yeah.
Venom is just a waste of time. Like I like the idea that he's become real cocky, and that at the same time Mary Jane is going through a crisis. I think that works within for the story. They're not able to communicate. I think that really works, and I like the idea of him becoming uber cocky. But then it just gets so goofy. It's like he's trying to recapture the raindrops stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work at all.
Well,
and
it has provided decades worth of memes. Evil Tobey Maguire dancing around.
And Topher Grace is just terrible in that movie. He is just awful.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's got a good cast. Like I said, the first 50 minutes, you see Peter Parker and Mary Jane. All that stuff works really great. The scene in the restaurant with Bruce Campbell is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Dallas Howard is good as Gwen Stacy, even though she doesn't really serve too much of a purpose in the story.
Yeah.
And Hayden Christensen, is that what's it? No, that's Anakin. Who's the Thomas?
Thomas, what is his name? Thomas Church or something.
Yeah, he would have been a great Sandman if they had. I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
But to me, the moment that Mary Jane goes to Harry's apartment, the movie just completely falls apart. Like from that point, it's just a big fat mess. Because Harry gets his memory back, then he starts he tricks her and he makes her break up with Peter, and it's like it just feels so dumb. And then he's like, "I'm the other man," and then and here's Venom. I mean, it's just oh gosh,
It's I heard that Raimi, the Venom was not, he didn't want to do Venom in this movie.
you think?
But the studio was pressuring him, and
that he should have had someone else come in and write it, because him and his brother wrote the movie.
yeah. You know, Spider-Man 3 is a disappointment, obviously. And so I definitely wanted to refresh because I hadn't seen those movies in a long time, and I'm glad I did. And it makes me excited to see what hopefully Tobey Maguire is bringing to the new Spider-Man movie, which could be a heck of a lot of fun, or as Mike said, a huge disaster. But you know, I'm optimistic. I think that having the three Spider-Men together could be quite great. So we'll see. And
I will say I just watched The Amazing Spider-Man, and while it's okay, I don't like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and he's the other piece of the puzzle of this new movie. And to be honest with you, I hadn't watched Spider-Man 3 since it came out in the theater.
Oh wow.
So that's been
That must have been a
2007.
real punch in the stomach then.
Yeah,
It's been a long time. I haven't seen any of these movies in forever.
Yeah.
A long, long time.
And
I remember I liked the first and second. I remember I did not like the third. I don't know if I even watched the whole way through on the third, because I didn't see any of them in the theater. Well, maybe I saw the first.
I think you saw part 2 in the theater with me.
Did you? I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
But yeah, so
is this now? It's funny. Not that we have to talk about this, too long. But Marvel cleverly bringing all these movies together into their own, Marvel universe. Is this just Marvel like the new dog pissing on the tree and owning that tree? Is that what he's doing now? Not letting these movies stand alone. Big Marvel has to go and piss on that little dog's tree to
Well,
market
I
now.
don't know if it's that. I think that sounds a little malevolent. But I do think it is.
You think?
It's them. I mean, because that's one thing Marvel has always kind of had is like the what if and like the multiverse.
Sure. Of
So
course.
it's like, why not? Why not just
No,
make everything?
I'm all for it. I think it's very clever.
Everything part of the MCU in some.
Have they figured out how to make Blade part of the MCU?
Well, they're bringing Blade in as a new character. They're
doing their own.
Yeah,
their
the
new
guy
Blade
that
reboot?
I forget the actor's name. Did you watch Luke Cage at all?
yeah, he was in Luke Cage.
Yeah, he was. He's a really good actor.
He was actually really good in that. So.
Yeah, he was the best part of that.
Marshala Ali, I think is his name.
I think that's a good casting choice. So
Good. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the old Blade movie.
Well, that's another one that took a dump in the third.
Oh man, did it ever fall down?
Oh,
Bad.
Was Ryan Reynolds in that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
man.
was.
Yeah, that's right.
That
Wow.
movie.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully we could talk more about the new Spider-Man once it's released. But but for now, are those sleigh bells I hear?
Are you serious, Clark?
I heard on the news that an airline pilot spotted Santa's sled on its way in from New York.
You serious, Clark?
The holidays are upon us. Christmas is coming. And we thought we'd take we take a moment on the hyperspace to remember and talk about some of our favorite memories of Christmas past. And, speaking of the weatherman's report and, NORAD tracking Santa, that I used to watch that. I mean, my mom and dad would really play that up on the TV. Hey, come here. They're talking about, look, see, he's over Cleveland right now, or some crap, So it was always kind of fun. And
I remember when I was little, I saw a plane out the window in the distance, and it looked like it had a red light in front of it. And I thought, that's Santa. That's Santa. And that is clearly Santa Claus.
I can get us kicked off here. One thing I remember, and this is like a memory I've never asked my parents about, but I'm pretty sure I know what was going on here. We grew up next door to an older couple, John and Marion, and they were kind of like our surrogate grandparents. John was a Korean War veteran, and so he was about 20 years older than my dad. There was this one Christmas Eve, and as most kids do on Christmas Eve, it's hard to sleep. Or if you go to sleep, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're like,
I'd say nigh impossible.
Yeah. And so this one morning, I heard our front door opening, and we had this screen door, and I heard the screen door. The screen door makes a lot of racket. So I was like, holy crap. What do I do? That's probably Santa. Because I looked at my clock, and it was 5 a.m. And I'm like, holy crap.
He's here, he's here, he's here.
So, but I was like, I can't wait. So I got up, and the way our old house was laid out, there was, a hallway that led down to the dining room and the living room. And I swear to God as my witness, as I sit here and live and breathe, I got up and looked down. There was a man dressed as Santa Claus in our living room. And I shit my pants.
Wait, how old are you? How old?
I was probably
16.
No. I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
All right.
Okay. And so he stops and doesn't move. And then I walk down the hall to Mom and Dad's room. And Mom and Dad are both asleep in bed.
Okay, this is weird.
Yeah, that's next level creepy right there.
This is strange.
And so I wake Mom and Dad up, and I'm like, hey, look, Santa Claus is in the, of course, they may be flipping their lids, but I'm like, hey, Santa Claus is in the living room right now. I said, and so my dad's like, okay, well, let me go to the bathroom, and you stay in here, and I'll go to the bathroom.
Get my gun.
And so I figured out many years later, when it occurred to me as an older person to wonder exactly what the hell was going on in my house that night. John played Santa Claus, our next door neighbor. And they were neighbors that they had a key to our house because they watched the house when we go out of town and everything. And there was some evidence years later that they were keeping my sister and my Christmas presents at their place, because we discovered that some years later
when you were rummaging through their house.
Yes, actually, yes. So, but you know what? There's one thing that I have never done is I've never asked my parents directly, hey, was that John? Because for some reason, some part of me just wants to say, hey, Santa Claus came to my house one night, and I don't want to know what it was.
All right. So wait a minute. Do you think that obviously your parents knew that John was going to come in and put the presents there?
Yes.
Did they know he was going to be dressed as Santa?
I believe so, yeah. Because I think he did that because
just in case?
Well, if he woke up, I mean, if one of us woke up, they would see Santa Claus in the living room and the magic would be preserved.
My worry was John just took it upon himself to come into your house dressed as Santa.
No, I'm almost certain that this was all prearranged. But you know what?
That's a lot of trust. That's a lot of trust.
No, it is. And John and Marion were the kind of neighbors you could do that with. You know, this was, again, a different time when you trusted your neighbors. Anyway, that's how I'm going to kick things off in a very creepy, strange.
All right. Well, I'll go next. I'll tell you the story of how my younger brother, who's 6 years younger than me, found out there was no Santa.
Oh, crap.
So when I was, he was, I was about 11. So he was about 5. You know, still that age where it's still magic.
Yes.
Magic still exists.
Yes.
And I was a jerk.
Oh, man.
So in my house, my room was next to my younger brother's room, and we had a shared bathroom. Okay. And then that door leading away from our rooms opened up into like the kitchen and the living room.
Mm-hmm.
My other brother was on the far side of that living room. Now, the living room had a chimney, and that's where our tree was set up, etc. So I came up with this idea that I was going to take a long piece of fishing line. And I was going to run it out of my door, under my door, and run it kind of like over like door jams and behind couches and stuff. And it really shouldn't have worked. And I had a bell that my dad had brought back from Japan. Back when my dad used to work for Pepsi, and he used to travel the world like crazy and bring back all these weird trinkets from around the world. And he would go all the way to Japan and then work his way back to the United States. So I get all these crazy weird stuff. And one of these things was a little bell that sounded a lot like a jingle bell. It really did. It was this cool bell. So I took all this fishing line and I arranged this kind of crazy contraption going around behind the couch and up this thing behind this fake tree on the mantle where I hid the bell. And my parents, their routine was they didn't do it that morning. As soon as the kids went to bed, they kind of like unloaded the presents with the rule that nobody's allowed to come out of their room. And then they went to sleep, and in the morning at Christmas. So it was like, I don't remember, it must have been like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. All the kids are asleep. And I had this fishing line, and it just ran right along the wall. Right? Didn't have to cross anything. So I was very proud of myself. And I start pulling on it from under the door. And I'm just pulling this fishing line back and forth, and I could hear the bell. And I knew my parents were out there, and my younger brother comes storming out of his room. Santa's here! Santa's here! And there is all my parents with the presents.
Red-handed.
And of course, they made up a story. And I think that he bought some of it, but I know deep down that's when all the magic went away.
And they proceeded to kill you.
Oh, they were so mad at me. They were so mad.
Man, what a jerk you were as a kid.
It was a jerk move, wasn't it?
You told us a lot of stories about you being a jerk as a kid.
Yeah.
Matt's just a jerk.
If you wear this is what
So what was the end game with this? To make him think Santa was there?
I really wanted him. I didn't expect him to jump out of the room. I expected him to be like really excited, and I was going to like be like, yeah, okay, Santa. I wanted to have that like fun interaction with him, but he just bolted because I was in my room, my door shut. I didn't like think that he was going to bolt. I just thought that he was going to get excited and I would be able to like interact with it. No, he just went right out the room. So I had no chance. He just ran. He ran for Santa.
Wow.
Trust.
So obviously, Mike, did you grow up in a house that celebrated Santa? Was Santa a thing? Okay.
Yes, Santa was a thing.
Gotcha.
I'm going to preempt this with it's nowhere near as entertaining as your two. Anyway, one of the things I did, of course, I think every kid did was, first of all, you couldn't sleep. And then you'd wake up 30 minutes later. And I knew my parents were in bed because it was all quiet. And so what I would do is I would sneak out into the living room to see what we got. And we lived in a small 2-bedroom house. Me and my sister shared a room, and my parents had a bedroom. This was before my brother was born.
Oh, wow.
And so I went out one morning, and what I would do is I would go out and whatever I got, I would take into our room and turn the light on so I could look at it. And so one Christmas, now I have to, one of my favorite toys as a kid, and I think we've talked about this before, was my $6 Million Man doll. And so I think I already had the $6 Million Man. So I went out there and I saw some stuff, and I grabbed like it was a doll. I mean, it was a toy, but you know, it was like this big. It wasn't like a small action figure. So I pick it up and I'm taking it back into my bedroom. The house is dead quiet. And I hear ka-ping and ka-ka-ka, and something like hits the floor. And I'm like, what the hell was that? So I go in the bedroom and I turn the light on. And it took me a few minutes to figure out because it was, I don't know if you ever watched the show $6 Million Man, but he had his Wrangler was Oscar. Do you remember Oscar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Oscar had a briefcase. So I was looking, I'm like, what is going on? Well, it turns out Oscar had an exploding briefcase. And I had triggered it, taking it into the room. And I didn't know what it was. I was just like, because I didn't even know they had like an Oscar figure, you know, so it was all, so I'm like, what the hell is this? So I figured out what it was because the portion of the suitcase that was shown was all like damaged looking. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I couldn't find it. So like the jig was up. My parents, I'm like, they would see the Oscar and they would figure it out. Of course they wouldn't. No way they would have even paid any attention to it. But of course I'm freaking out. So I put it back up. And then later when the sun started to come out, I found the piece that had flown off of the suitcase. And I was able to put it back together. And, you know, perfect crime. No one, but
I survived. I'll never found out.
I'll never forget that sound though when the house is completely quiet. And I just hear ka-ping.
That's fantastic.
So
that's funny.
Another treasured memory. This was probably, I don't know, 81 or 82. We had several Christmas celebrations because we would have one at home in Tennessee, and then we would usually travel to Illinois for the grandparents. And then at each set of grandparents' house, we'd have another Christmas celebration. So me and my sister would just get hooked up every Christmas. So it was my grandma and Grandpa Hannah. They got me, and like in the early 80s, one of the things I really wanted was a digital watch. My gosh, having a digital watch to me was just like the end all be all. And so I opened up this package and it was a Star Wars digital watch. And I just remember screaming, like, I got a digital watch! And it had R2 and 3PO on it. And I have it still.
Oh, wow.
Is that it?
There you go. Here's a look at it.
Wow.
It doesn't
work anymore?
I don't know. I haven't changed the battery in like 30 years, so I don't know. But
does it fit?
It does not. It's this big.
It's amazing you didn't lose it.
No.
Is that a leather band?
It is. A leather band, R2 and 3PO.
That's impressive.
And when I thought about this show that we were doing, I knew I still had this watch somewhere. And I actually did have to go through quite a lot to find it, but it was in the bottom of one of the many boxes in the Tockstein house. So
nice.
I found it, and now I will display it.
I say, but 1981 was about that year where digital watches were, as a kid, like really cool.
Yeah, you're like, man.
I remember that. I remember there was a digital watch with a pop off like robot, like it was like a transformer robot that, and like they had all those kinds of things. So like I remember you're right. I remember a digital watch was like a big deal. Like I wanted a digital watch too. I don't think I had one.
You remember they had like they had some you could play like Pac-Man on. It was a really
Yes.
crappy like rudimentary version.
I wanted one of those so bad.
I remember the big one
So
that
bad.
came out really that I thought was amazing was the calculator one.
Yes, the calculator watch.
You know, we talked about this not long ago, but those like arcade watches, I remember being in an earlier service merchandise catalog.
Oh yes.
And I remember looking at like those watches and like drooling over those as like a little kid.
Yeah.
When your parents let you look through that catalog and
Yep.
like, oh, there it was. Oh, I
Man,
wanted one
and
so
they were
bad.
like $20, which was completely out of reach. It's like,
especially for a little kid.
yeah, you're never going to see $20 in your lifetime.
No.
I mean, but man, yeah.
You know, by the way, speaking of $20, you know, it's funny how you get older and you really, of course, learn and appreciate the value of money. And so I guess about that age, I guess about 1981 is a fair gauge. A $20 bill in 1981 was probably like $50 today,
Yeah.
if not more. And I remember we used to go to the Burger King down the street once a week where we were allowed to get Burger King and milkshakes. And it was always a big deal. I think it was like on Fridays as little kids. And we had our whatever year station wagon with wood paneling that we're all in. And my dad, obviously he just got back from work, so he puts everyone in the car. We all want to go through the drive-thru at Burger King. And he's going to pay with a $20 bill for everybody's dinner. And he's just kind of holding it, you know, nothing special. And it slips out of his fingers and goes into the window slot. The window's down.
That's
and
talent.
it disappeared. And it's gone. It just sucked it in. And I never understood as a kid why my dad was so angry at just losing some money in the car. But now I realize, you know, back then, you know,
Sure.
how mad I'd be if I dropped, you know, $50, $60 all of a sudden down the car window slot and couldn't get it out. But in
He
the end, it
couldn't
was
roll
probably
up
worth
the window and get it back?
No, he tried. It was gone. It was just like in the mechanism.
Somewhere
forever.
that car is sitting in a junkyard with a $20 bill.
It's worth more than the car right now. But yeah, that's true.
That's awesome.
But those digital watches, man, that was a hot thing back then, guys. No one can comprehend listening to this if you're not like middle age right now, if you're not our age, you can't comprehend how cool a digital watch was, especially like for a kid to have. All this is taken for granted now because everything is like digital, and you know, kids have smartphones at 5 years old.
Smart watches.
I wanted, smart watch. If I could have had a digital watch like what Jared just held up, man, it would have made my year. My year.
I just remember how excited I was. Like, I can't believe I have a digital watch. It was amazing.
Yep, that's amazing.
So
I'll go. I'll talk. I'm going to talk about a really just. It's not funny, but it's like a cherished Christmas memory that I have.
okay.
And it was the Christmas of 1983. So in 1983, I was living in Bethel, Connecticut. Very pretty town, very Norman Rockwell-esque kind of thing. Perfect place for a kid to be there for a couple of years. Woods that you could run in forever.
Yeah.
You know, nice neighborhood, safe. You know, had friends. It was a good spot for a 9-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, whatever I was. And of course, I was a huge Star Wars fan, and I had a collection of Star Wars figures. But there was also at the time running like He-Man was hot.
Yep.
Transformers were coming on the scene. It was like an amazing time for like toys and kids TV. But I remember that night we had gone to bed, and during the night it had snowed. It hadn't snowed up until this point, and we woke up and the snowstorm was gone, and it was perfectly blue sky with nothing but like all this great fresh snow. And so it was a great white Christmas, and it was the last white Christmas I would have until a few years ago when I moved up to New York.
Oh wow.
But I remember specifically that year, some of the toys I got were like the Tauntaun. I got a speeder bike. I got all these great Star Wars toys, and I got like all these figures. And I think before I even unwrapped everything else, I had taken those Star Wars toys, thrown on my jacket and some boots, and I went outside and I built like a Hoth base out of all the new snow. And I spent all day out there until I froze. And I'll always remember like playing with that Tauntaun and that speeder bike, which of course, you know, they should never be together, but they were. In my Hoth base in my front yard in Connecticut. And like that's what I look back on as like one of my like favorite Christmas memories of all time.
Yep, that's a good one, man. It's always some of my favorites, and I'll talk about that soon. It's usually associated with the toys that I got. And I don't know, when you guys got toys as kids for Christmas, did your folks unbox them and put them together and set them under the tree, or was it did they just wrap up the box and put
Just
it in
the box?
I remember the first year I got Star Wars figures. They were all out of their packages. And I remember, God, I was like, I couldn't have been maybe 6 because I was 5 when I saw Star Wars. And this was like with the first wave that had come out.
Mm-hmm.
So I must have been about 6.
That probably would have been about 78 because they didn't have Star Wars figures for the first year of Christmas.
And I remember finding the boards that the figures came on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, like, why did Santa leave the packet? You know, I was like, why did he? Because I believed at that point, I was going on the belief that his elves had made these.
Yeah, sure. Why do you have to buy them at the store?
Yeah, so why were there? And I remember as a kid, I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Little clues.
So, but then, no, my parents would put it together. In fact, my favorite, of all the stuff I remember getting the Star Wars figures, and I remember the Millennium Falcon I got a Millennium Falcon, and
Never had it. Always wanted it.
and it was just just seeing that thing sitting there under the Christmas tree was just, you know, because that thing was awesome. That Millennium Falcon was awesome. Was an awesome toy.
100%.
And you know, when you could have that thing land in your living room and you could have your figures walking in and out of it, getting in the cockpit and then flying away. I mean, that was it. See, it's kind of funny because the toys you are talking about, and it's funny because it's not that big of an age difference between us, but those are the toys my brother was getting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember one year, my parents, and it was kind of interesting because at that point, obviously, I was in on it. You know, I knew there was no Santa, and my parents were trying to find my brother every single Masters of the Universe figure they could get their hands on. And I remember my mom would come home and go, "We found a Whiplash," and she had a friend my brother had a friend that was close to the same age as him, and his mom was doing the same thing. So they kind of worked together. Like one would call the other, "I found the blah, blah, blah," or they would actually buy them for the other and they would, you know, pay each other back. But I do remember that Christmas, Beastman was not to be found. They could not find Beastman at all.
Man.
But so anyway, that was cool because they had all his He-Man figures,
Like all set up.
Set up, yeah. But
Bought
see
it
that
out of the box and set
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm glad my parents didn't do that.
No.
There's something about opening the toy and getting it out. And
I don't know. For me, it was just cool to immediately start playing with it.
Well, that's what I thought too, and that Mike's story leads me perfectly to my story. Is that for a while my folks did unwrap and put together and set everything under the tree, opened up, and my story is specific to 1980 Christmas, and I know that because that's me and the Falcon.
there you
And
go.
on the back,
and the Falcon.
and on the back of that picture, my mom had written Christmas 1980. So there's no doubt about when it was taken. And that was the Christmas. I got the Millennium Falcon, a Hoth playset. I got a carrying case that was packed with figures. Like, my dad had I still have the carrying case in here somewhere.
You got the Hoth playset in 1980?
Yes.
Wow.
And
Lucky guy.
well,
Which one did you get? Because I had
was
the one.
It was one that had the cannon and the probe droid.
Okay, I had the one that had the cardboard AT-AT.
Yes, I got that one too, but I didn't get it till later.
Man, oh man, look at that.
Look, it's really worse for wear, but it's still here.
Missing the cockpit window. Looks like the radar dish is gone.
Yeah, it's in pretty rough shape, but it's the same one from that picture in 1980.
You know, the thing about the Millennium Falcon, at least for me, I never had it, but the reason why I wanted it so much, and the playsets were great because, you know, obviously you got to immerse your characters in like real world kind of like places. They just weren't, you know, acting on your bed or your bookshelf. But like the Falcon was different than those other playsets because the Falcon, they could go in. And there was like corridors, and like it was like it was Star Wars right there. That's as much as they could be in actual Star Wars.
It even had the fake floor, so you could hide.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like
floor.
That was as real as of being in real Star Wars as you could get for your figures right there. And I just that was always one of the things I always wanted as a kid. And I always look fondly back, and I see that you lift up that Falcon. I hear Mike get the Falcon, and like that was like the Star Wars toy to have.
Yeah.
And I had like other vehicles that were cool, but nothing was ever as cool as the Falcon. Always wanted it.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's probably the year that sticks out to me the most. It's just that, and maybe it's because I have that dated picture and I can point to it and say, I remember that exactly what I was doing, what I felt when I walked in there, and there they were, all of them. And an honorable mention for me was several years at, probably 84, 85. That was like when I got the G.I. Joe hookup. Like I got the Killer Whale hovercraft and the Sky Striker in the same year, which are two, like, you know, the Sky Striker was the F-14 and the Killer Whale was this big thing. And that's another one I remember. Just like, man, just like hit the lottery. Like I couldn't believe how awesome it was. But those were not put together. They had to, you know, at that point my parents were wrapping the boxes, and I remember my dad saying, you know, I'm not staying up till 2 a.m. anymore applying decals, because apparently the Falcon was a huge pain in his ass. So, and
I know that pain.
And I remember the Sky Striker had like 15 pages of decals or something, and I was sitting there for 2 hours putting on all these stickers.
Yeah, but you loved every minute of it. I mean,
yeah,
putting stickers on a toy was really, really.
Yeah, because it was like, oh man, when I'm done with this, I can actually play with it.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I remember I just saw a recent article. You know, we talked about vintage toys in the podcast before. So apparently, right now, as far as like vintage toys go, if you can find a G.I. Joe, help me out here. I guess it was a shuttle.
The
station.
space shuttle they had. Yeah,
right. There was like a launch. There was like a station that went with it. All this stuff. If you can find one of those intact, regardless of like the condition, as long as all the pieces are there. Right now, that is one of the highest going for like secondary market value things out there right now.
Yeah,
is like one of those.
I believe
stations.
That was a little,
and they were talking about different Star Wars toys and stuff. But like right now, that one, no matter what the condition, as long as all the pieces are there, is like primo on lists.
Thousands
right
probably.
Oh yeah, I think they were saying like there was some going for like $20,000 in like mint condition.
Man, I remember I that shuttle came out after I had stopped collecting G.I. Joe.
It must have been limited run in what it was.
But I saw
towards the end of that.
The son of my dentist had it. You know, we would socialize with the dentist. I think I've talked about this in the past. But he had that, and it was very impressive. It was a great toy.
You always had that one kid who had that.
Well, you know, if he's the son of a dentist, he's probably got money, so
probably.
But yeah, it was really cool. So I've actually seen one in person, but not in many years, and certainly not paying $20,000 for one. Good grief!
No,
that's crazy.
This one goes under more sentimental. I think it's actually kind of funny because I just remembered this was another big Christmas gift I got. And this probably would have been 84, 85. What year did Thriller come out?
83.
Was that 83?
Yeah.
So it was 83 or 84. I think we've discussed this before, the portable stereos or the
Boom boxes. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the year I got that. I finally got my own because everyone in the neighborhood had their own. So I finally got one. And my aunt had given me a cassette copy of Thriller. It wasn't like the actual...
Wasn't the LP?
Store-bought.
Now, did you have... Was it a double cassette or was it a single cassette?
It was like a Memorex tape. With she
No. I mean, like your boombox. Was it a double or
single? It was single. So, but anyway, what's kind of interesting about... This was like, I was in middle school and I was kind of transitioning out of being a kid. And like I said, we still lived in our house on Rutledge Pike, and it was a small 2-bedroom house. And my brother had been born by this point, and I guess he would have been about two or three. And this house like didn't have central air and heating. And this winter, it was so cold that there was ice on the windows.
So did you use like space heaters and stuff?
A kerosene heater. They had a kerosene heater.
Oh, the kerosene, yep.
And we only had one. And so what it was is we had the living room and
do short straws
by proxy the kitchen.
Was this
who gets to sleep by the heater and
Little House on
who's
the
in the
Prairie?
icebox?
Did Michael Landon come in and play the fiddle?
So this is how it was so cold that we were just all in the living room for Christmas. But I wanted to listen to my stereo.
Sure.
So I had to put a coat on, put some socks and shoes on. I went back in my bedroom and sat in my bedroom by myself with my portable stereo, and I had that Thriller, and I think I had Def Leppard Pyromania. But I just sat in there by myself in this freezing cold room listening to music on my stereo. And I'll never forget that Christmas because there was literally ice on the window.
Man. Wow. That's
but you had that boom box.
We did not have a lot of money.
The beat kept you warm, man. That's all you needed.
Well, I mean, this is how the house we lived in did not have a shower.
It's just a bathtub?
I didn't have a house with a shower until we moved to Halls right before my freshman year, the summer before my freshman year of high school. And
so
everyone just used the bathtub?
Yeah, it was a bathtub. And I remember, when we moved into the house, everyone was like, "Who's taking the first shower?" It was like a big deal. We were like the Beverly Hillbillies. Man. We're going to go down to the cement pond.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting memory, getting all bundled up to go in your room and listen to Michael Jackson. Man, that's good stuff.
Okay, so my last thing I'll share was when I was a kid, roughly, I guess I think it started when I was like 11-ish. So was it 86-ish? A movie hit the scene that became like a holiday tradition every year before TBS started to abuse it. And that's A Christmas Story.
Fragile. It must be Italian.
Well, I think that says fragile, honey.
Oh, yeah.
So when A Christmas Story came out, obviously if you haven't seen it, go see it. But like for my parents, and I'm sure Jared, if your parents like it, and Mike, even yours, it was that golden age, the 50s in America, the true Americana, the good old days. It's a great movie that my parents, my dad especially, watches this movie, and he's just like, he spent time as a kid in Ohio where like this was near, and he remembers a lot of the stuff in the movie, like what they're talking about, and like it really connects with my father. And likewise, watching it, it really is just that great, wholesome, innocent Christmas movie that you can watch and enjoy. And I think it captures the Christmas spirit. It captures family.
It's like a real family.
Yeah, and it captures the right feels for you for the time of year. So we made it a big deal that we watched this every year as a family, and I loved it and waited for it. And I think I was 13 when one Christmas I got a BB gun. My dad had kind of like gone with the movie theme, and he got myself and my twin brother each a BB gun. And my brother was very jealous because my gun looked like a standard kind of like a hunting rifle Daisy BB gun, one pump. You know. His was like out of the movie, like the Red Rider kind of one, and it wasn't nearly as cool. But his was more powerful than mine. But he hated the look of his. But anyways, so this was if you ever owned did you have a BB gun as a kid? Anyone?
Oh no, there was no, that was
no BB gun.
No,
Jared.
No, I didn't have. I didn't have a BB gun.
So this thing was so much fun. I spent all day, and this was Florida, and it was like a mild winter outside, so it was probably like in the 50s, so it wasn't too cold. So I like set all my stuff up, and I start shooting stuff, and I instantly I'm like zeroed in on it. I'm shooting like dimes. I'm like coming in like with ruined coins, going, look what I did, and my dad's like, oh great. But it was so cool to have this BB gun. And I remember service merchandise. Here we go again. I had bought a scope for it that fit. It was really cool.
Do you like a briefcase?
A briefcase, yeah. But but that BB gun was one of my favorite gifts of all time. But anyways, the story though that day was, you learn, especially when you never had one. So my brother was kind of impatient. He wanted to like reset up the targets, and I was still shooting. And so he went to set up the targets.
Here comes Matt the jerk.
No, unintentional. So I was zeroed in, like I told you. I was nailing dimes from 50 yards in the center. I was like,
okay, I don't believe that part of the story. Just so
all right, it was about 10 feet. No, I actually
yards.
No, it wasn't 50 yards. It was.
I was on a grassy knoll.
From about 20, 30 feet out, I was hitting little coins, and I was like, this is amazing because you could watch the BB travel. Because they're slow enough, you could see him travel in the air, and you could kind of like really like zero in. Long story short, my brother was next to those targets, and this is the first day having it. I'm not an expert, so I wanted to shoot the dime next to him, and I wound up shooting him like in the back of the leg, and he went in crying to my parents, and I had to spend like the next like 3 hours without a BB gun sitting in my room on Christmas because I shot my brother with a BB gun.
Way to go! I got in trouble because,
but it was unintentional. I wasn't aiming for him. I just hit him in the back of the
I made a comment that my grandmother had gotten us some GoBots, and I made the comment she must have gotten us GoBots because she couldn't afford Transformers.
Oh no!
My dad was pissed. He sent me to my room. This was on Christmas. I had to sit in my room with no toys. Oh, he was so mad. Rightfully so. But
yeah, that's a pretty rotten thing to say.
Yeah, it was
I'm not the only jerk.
Garbage thing to say about a gift my grandmother had gotten me.
Were they GoBots?
Oh yeah, they were actual GoBots.
I remember getting GoBots, thinking they were great until I got Transformers. Then GoBots were like.
I only had one GoBot, Cop Tor.
I had Side Kill.
Leader one.
Mike's story there just reminded me of one more, and this was terrible. So, like I said, we would have Christmas in Tennessee and then go up to Illinois and have it with the grandparents. And my cousin, aunt and uncles, they all lived in Illinois. So this was a Christmas where, you remember Cabbage Patch Kids? Like the madness surrounding Cabbage Patch Kids. Like, people getting in fights in the store and everything. Well, this was a year where my sister she was lucky enough to get a Cabbage Patch doll. And my cousin, who's a year younger than me and a year older, she's right between me and my sister. So her name's Amy, and we used to hang out with her. She was kind of like another sister when we were growing up. But my aunt and uncle, they could not find a Cabbage Patch. So they tried to pass off another doll as a Cabbage Patch. And let me tell you, young Jared, he wasn't having any of that nonsense. So my cousin Amy is there. She's got this doll. It looks pretty close, but it's definitely not a Cabbage Patch.
Was she happy?
She was.
Until
because she thought she had a Cabbage Patch. My sister Julie had a Cabbage Patch. And so
she was younger than you?
Yeah, she's 1 year younger than me, and she's 1 year older than my sister. So she's right in between us. And I was probably, this was like when I was 9 or 10, or this was probably 83, 84. So we get over to my aunt and uncle's house, and, Amy's all proud of her new doll, and Julie, my sister, she really didn't pick up on it. She's just like, oh, she's pretty. And, they're panning the dolls back and forth. And I'm like, hey, that's not a Cabbage Patch.
Oh.
I can imagine the looks on the adults' faces when you said that.
My Uncle Ray was like, no, Jared, that's a Cabbage Patch. And
yeah, of course.
And my Aunt Donna was like, no. We've got a box that says Cabbage Patch. It's a Cabbage Patch, Jared. And my mom was like, Jared, shut up. But I'm just sitting there going, well, it's not a Cabbage Patch. I mean, look at it. It's not a Cabbage Patch.
So did you ruin it?
No, well, I was shut down before that happened, but many years later, my Uncle Ray did tell me, he goes, I tell you, you little bastard, I was ready to shoot you. And I can totally see now why that would have been a problem. Because hey, that's not a Cabbage Patch. Well, I don't know what it is, but it's not a Cabbage Patch. And
so literally, that reminds me, tonight I had taken my daughters to go to dance class.
Okay.
So in my house, my wife brought into this house 2 of the elves on the shelf. I didn't agree with it, but I came home and they were there, and the story had already begun.
Oh.
So these things are from now 3 years running now. So I can't not participate in it. Never wanted them, but they're a part of this. So my son, who's 6 years old, is still, bless his heart, still all about the magic of everything.
Yeah. Good.
He really is. At 6 years old, he's still a part of it. Yeah. And I fight every day to maintain that magic for him, because I want to have it as long as he can.
As parents, that's something new to Christmas now. For when I had young kids, when my daughter was young, that's where Christmas became magical again, because you could give that to your kids. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, and I can't stand them, because I feel it's true just commercialism incarnate. These things, they're not part of my tradition, but now they're unfortunately part of theirs. Anyways, so we're at the dance class tonight, and the way this works is that, of course, all the parents are sitting in a very small area waiting for their daughters to be done with dance. And they're all just chatting back and forth. And a lot of this conversation, because these are young kids in the dance class, consists of new parents talking about new parents' woes. So-and-so is just now giving up the pacifier. So-and-so is, oh, look, she's got to pee again, the little liar. This is the stuff that I'm hearing. But anyways, my son is sitting next to me. I had to drag him to this class because my wife was working. He's watching, he's playing a video game. And some of the conversation next to me is a woman whom I have to say quite impolitely is discussing things with kids in the room. Okay. Which I would never do if I saw kids in the room. And she starts saying, that's right, I had to go replace that damn elf on the shelf.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. They still believe in that crap. And she's saying this right next to me. Now, luckily, my son is kind of transfixed in his video game, so I didn't think he heard. So I looked at her. I hadn't said hello to her or anything. And I said, my son, and I made him look at her, put my arm around him, and said, he believes in the elves and the shelves. We have 2 of them in our house. And I kind of shot her the look, and she she understood what she had said, and she understood, and she's like, oh yeah. And she kind of backtracked a little bit. I'm thinking, it's like minefields this time of year, trying to maintain the magic for your kids, Yeah. And I know it's going to happen. They're going to get on the bus one day, and I know they're going to, older kids are going to spoil it for them and tell them the ways of the world, and they're going to come home a little wiser and think a little different about Christmas. But for right now, this might be my son's last Christmas. They still believe in it. It's still magic, unspoiled. And I swear I was going to rip her head off. I'm like, you can't take that away from my kid. And I can't let a minefield like that trip it up.
Yeah.
So, But it's interesting though. But you're right. It brings the magic back to you as a parent. You know, where Christmas kind of fades away, it becomes special. Like it becomes more special again. It's always a special time anyway. But you kind of recapture that feeling through their eyes, and that's a special thing. And you don't want to lose it. And I'm sure even when you do lose it, you still find ways to see it through their eyes. But man.
Well, real quick, I'm going to just tell something I got Seth. He's been bugging me for this for a long time. I got him an electric guitar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we're going to sign him up for lessons. And
is it like a full size or like a junior size?
It's like a kid size. It's medium. It's mid size. Yeah, mid size. So the way I'm going to set it up for him, and I haven't told David because I don't trust those kids not to keep secrets.
No, they won't.
So we had the Rock Band game. They love to play Rock Band. And it's funny, and I didn't even do this on purpose. One of the Rock Band guitars is blue, and the guitar I got him is blue. So what I'm going to do is after Christmas, you know, we open everything and everything's kind of settled down. I'm going to swap out the Rock Band guitar for the real guitar. And then I'm going to say, hey, let's play some Rock Band, you know. So hopefully when he goes over there to get the guitar, you know, he'll have that moment of, what's this? You know,
or he just gets angry because it's not working with the game. He smashes it.
He'll figure it out. But
that's good.
Yeah, I like to do stuff. You know, kind of make it fun for them.
Well, that's cool because that's something that you look forward to as well.
Yeah, and I tell you, I have to be honest. I always kind of enjoyed putting their stuff together. I remember one year we got them this like plastic clubhouse. And I'm actually, I guess I'm unusual where I follow directions. I mean, I like take everything out. I put everything in a row. I have all the parts and pieces, and I get the booklet, and I'm going step by step, and
then you hit a speed bump, and you're like, "Why don't you just fit together? What are you? You're supposed to work."
I will say, I remember the year I put that together. I listened to the commentary for Gremlins 1 and 2. While I was putting it together.
There you go. Man. Well, I'll tell you, to close this out, Matt, you were talking about Christmas Story earlier. Darren McGavin in that movie is a work of comedic genius.
That's like a father. Good. That's like the perfect emulation of how a father is.
In the heat of battle, my father wove a tapestry of obscenity that, as far as we know, is still hanging in space over Lake Michigan.
Next time you watch that movie, when a scene's going on and he's in it but not talking, just watch him. Because he is always doing something funny. Like, when he's hungover in the morning, on Christmas morning, and he comes downstairs, just looking at his reactions to what's going on, he just looks disgusted and just completely... He's a genius in that film. So
I tell you another thing, too. I mean, this is where parenting has changed so much. One of my favorite scenes is when after Ralphie has beat up the bully, and the mother goes into the kitchen and the little brother's in the sink crying. And she's like, what's the matter? He goes, Daddy's going to kill Ralphie.
Yeah. Dad's going to kill Ralphie. He just assumed that it was going to happen. That's so good.
I mean, that's like, remember when you were a kid and you did something and you're like, that's it, I'm dead. I'm dead. As soon as my dad comes home from work.
Yeah.
You start writing out your will.
I know. It's like, I won't be at school tomorrow.
I bequeath my stuff to my sister. Because I'm dead.
Man. Well,
guys, I'm sorry. I'm getting knocks on my doors again. I think it's they're seeing
the
my
pineapple
lights.
People.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for listening to the Hyperspace this week. By the time this episode drops, we'll be just a few weeks from Christmas, probably. So, anyway, go out there and enjoy. We've got some good stuff coming up. Book of Boba Fett's right around the corner. Be watching for some new Carbonite Chronicles coming out. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.